Hello everyone, I am Amod and welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video tutorial, we are going to learn about scoping in JavaScript. So in any programming language, the term scoping is related to visibility and accessibility of members like variables, functions, objects, etc. within the current context of execution. So what do we understand by visibility and accessibility? Let's start with an example. I'm going to create one variable using let x equal to 10 and let's log this on console x equal to x. Let's run this program and you can see it is printing x equal to 10. Very simple. Now I'm going to create a function abc and within this function I'm going to log x and here I will just change the string maybe from function and let's call this function below. If you run this program, you can see it is printing x equal to 10 and from function x equal to 10. Now I'm going to create a new variable within my function. So use let y equal to 20. I will log this y within function and outside the function. So here from function y and here I will have outside function y. Let's save it and run it. So here we see after printing some logs it is giving some error. Let's understand. So this log is printed, then ABC is called. So this is printed as well. Then a new variable is created and then this is printed. Perfect. And when the execution comes at line number 11, it is giving error like reference error y is not defined. So why it is giving error? So what is happening here that here we declared one variable x outside of any function basically. So this x becomes a global variable. That means we can use this x anywhere within this script file. That is global. But when we created a variable within this function, which is y here, this y will be accessible or visible within this my function only. Outside of this function, we cannot access it. So in another term, we can say this y is a local variable or a function variable. So this is called visibility and accessibility. So x is a global variable or in a global scope, but y is in local scope. Now let's see scoping JavaScript in much more detail. So in JavaScript, majorly we have four different types of scopes. First one, global scope. Second, local or function scope. Third, block scope. And fourth, module scope. Let's see each one in detail. And if you notice, I have already covered global scope and function scope in this example already. So we know that in JavaScript, we can create variable using var, let or const. So at this stage, whatever keyword you use, that will be a global variable. For example, I'm going to comment line number 11 as of now. And if I use const and run the program, you can see it is giving output as expected. Similarly, instead of const, we can use var. And if you run it, you'll get the same output. So we know that JavaScript can be executed on a browser or in a Node.js environment, which is server side. Generally, we call running JavaScript in a browser, that's client side, and Node.js environment is server side. So in both the environment, JavaScript provides a global object which is in global scope. So in the browser, the default global object is called window, but in Node.js environment, the global object is called global. This is little tricky concept if you are not aware or not executed JavaScript in a browser. But I will cover basics of that so that you'll understand the concept better. Here I have one JS file called script.js. You can give any name. And here I am going to declare variable x equal to 10 and let me log this variable. But this JavaScript file I'm not going to run in Node environment. I'm going to use a browser client. So for that, I have one index.html and within this index.html, within the body tag, I'm going to call my JS file using script tag. So basically it will launch the browser with my JS file. So right click on index.html and we have one option open with live server. If you don't get this option, you need to install an extension called live server in VS Code. That is very simple process. If you click on this option, you can see one browser window is opened, and if you open the console, then you can see it is printing 10 here. This 10 is coming from this script.js. If you don't believe it, I'm going to put some string like value of x is. Save it and come to this tab. You can see value of x is 10. And when we run our JS file in a browser, we have one default object which is called window. And why I'm explaining all these things? Because when we use where keyword to create a variable. So that variable will be added to window global object. What do you mean by that? That means I'm going to have one more console.log, and here I will use window.x. So window is a global object which is in global scope. That means we can use it anywhere. And what I'm saying, when we use where keyword to declare a variable, so that variable will be automatically part of default object which is called window in a browser. If you go to tab, you can see it is printing 10. Why it is possible? Because this X will be added to my window global object so that I can use the reference and call X. But when we run our JS file in a node environment, not in a browser, then we have different global object, which is called global. Global is the name here. Now let's try to run this script.js in a node environment. So on the console, we'll type node and go to the path where it is present, hit enter. You can see it has printed value of x equal to 10, but for the next console it is giving error, window is not defined, reference error. So as I said, window is only for browsers. For node, we have global object named global. Let's use global.x. Let's run it again. So now you can see it is not giving the proper value of x, but it is giving undefined. So two things are clear. First thing, global is the global object in case of node. So it is not giving any reference error. But if you run the same program in browser, you'll get the error. In fact, you can see here now, when caught reference error, global is not defined. So you can see the difference. And the second concept, that when we use where keyword to declare a global variable, in case of node environment, that variable will not be by default added to give global scope. That's why it is giving undefined here. So if you want to add any variable to global scope, then explicitly we need to use global dot variable name. If you run the program now, you'll get the value as expected. So just to summarize the concept here, that when we use where keyword to declare any global variable, that will be added to window global object by default. It will not be applicable for let and const. But in case of node environment, whatever keyword you use, it will never be added to global object which is global in Node.js. To add to global object in Node.js, we explicitly need to use global.variable name. So this is all about global scope in JavaScript. Now let's see second scope, which is called local scope or function scope. So I have already shown that any variable declared within a function will have a local scope. So I'm going to have a function ABC, and within this function I'm going to declare three variables using where, let and const. So where x equal to 10, let y equal to 20, and const z equal to 30. And all these three variables can be accessed within my function. And let's try to access these variables outside of this function as well. So before that, I'm going to call ABC. Let's run the program. And here you can see it is logging 10, 20, 30 as expected. But at line number 25, it is giving x is not defined. So the concept is same. If you declare any variable using any keyword within a function, that will be a local scope or function scope. That means we cannot access those variables outside of that function. In JavaScript, we can have function within a function, which is called inner function. Let me show you one example. So I have one function outer, and here I am going to have a variable x equal to 10, and I am going to create another function within my outer function called inner. And if you try to log x here, let's see what happens. So I'm going to call outer function. If you run the program, you can see it is not printing anything because we need to call this inner function explicitly within the outer function. So let me call inner here. Now if you run the program, it is printing 10. That means inner function can access variables declared within outer function. But if we have any variable within the inner function, that means let y equal to 20, and if you try to access this y outside of inner function, let's see what happens. Save it and run it. So you can see y is not defined. That means inner function can access variable declared within the outer function, but outer function cannot access the variables declared in inner function. And this will be applicable for all the keywords to create a variable. Let's move to third scope, which is called block scope. And this is little tricky. So in JavaScript, we can have a block like this, or we can have a if block like this, or we can have a for loop. So what is block scope here? So within this block, I'm going to create three variables using where, let and const. And if you run the program, so you can see it is printing 10, 20 and 30. Let's try to log these three variables outside of this block. Save it, run it, and here you see it has printed 10, 20, 30, and then it has printed the value of x, which is defined using where keyword. But for y, it is giving y is not defined, reference error. So what is happening here? If you create any variable using where keyword outside of any function, here we don't have any function, we have a block. So in that case, your x will become a global variable. That means you can access it anywhere. But the same case we don't have with let and const. That means let and const will have only block scope. We cannot access it outside of block. So if you compare with function and block here, all the concepts are same, but when you consider where, so in block scope, where variable will become a global variable. That is the only difference between function scope and block scope. And in the modern JavaScript, we generally avoid using where keyword. Now let's see the final scope, which is called module scope, which is latest as per ES6. So in ES6, every JavaScript file will have their own scope, which is called module scope. And we cannot access variables of one JS file to another JS file without exporting and importing. So here I'm going to create a new JS file, maybe module1.js, and another JS file called module2.js. In module 1, I'm going to create a variable, let x equal to 10. And let me also create a function f1, and let me log console.log abc. So basically in module1.js, I have two members x and a function f1. So if you want to use this x or this f1 outside of this JS, it is not possible directly. So both files will run in their scope, which will be module scope. And if you want to use anything from different JS files, they need to export that. It means before this let, I can use a keyword export, and here also I can use export. It means from module1.js, I am exporting x and function f1 so that outside of this JS file can be used. But for that also, we need to explicitly import it. So let's use import, and let's use x and f1 from give the file name, which is module1.js. And here we can use console.log x, and let's call f1. Let me run module2.js. Hit enter. So still you see it is giving syntax error like cannot use import statement outside a module. And if you read the console, it is giving you the solution as well, like to load an ES module, set type in package.json. So basically I need to say that load every JS file as a module. I'll cover about module in some separate video, but to run this example, I'm going to add one package.json within my project. So at the root level, let's create a file package.json, and here I need to use a property called type, and value will be module. And now if I run the program, you can see it is printing 10 and ABC. So this is called module scope. So I hope you are clear with the scoping in JavaScript. I agree at some places it is confusing, but you need to write some code and experience the behavior yourself. Then concept will be clear. So that's all in this video. If you have any doubt, please comment on this video. If you really like my videos, please like, comment, subscribe and share with others. Thank you everyone.